As the title would imply, I have invested over 20 hours into Bless Unleashed up until this point. I did that because I wanted to give this game a chance. Many people know my thoughts on the company behind the game, but this is going to be my opinion, my experience of the Unleashed title specifically, disregarding the franchise's history, disregarding the company behind it. And before you guys go on to complain that I've changed my stance on the game or that I haven't given it enough time, if after 20 hours I am unable to say that I either enjoy or don't enjoy aspects of the game, then you might need to reassess what having an opinion entails. Or maybe just close out of the video, because this is going to trigger ardent defenders of the game and avid haters of it as well. Now, before we go any further, I would like to note, these are my 100% honest, unsponsored opinions. I was not paid anything to play the game, nor am I financially incentivized to withhold my opinion in any capacity. Not that there is anything wrong with taking a Bless sponsor, but I felt as though it would be in the community's best interest if I were to tackle this with absolutely no bias, no incentive, and no ulterior motives. I do feel the need to state this prior to actually going into the video, because I know there are going to be a lot of people that are of the opinion that anyone that says anything positive about the game is automatically sponsored to say positive things about it. And honestly, I will preface everything by stating right now that while Bless Unleashed is in no way a great game, it was far from being as bad as I thought it was initially going to be. Now, once again, I have put over 20 hours into Bless Unleashed since it launched. I opted to stream my first deeper dive into the game so that our community could get a feel for it without having to necessarily waste time themselves. Over those 20 hours, I experienced quite a bit of the game. I managed to make it past level 20. I got to try out dungeons. I got to try out world boss fights. Admittedly, I didn't get to participate in any types of PvP, but the PvE aspect of Bless Unleashed is honestly a lot of fun. After having recently played through Allion as well as Bless Unleashed, I can say with utmost certainty that this has a much better leveling experience. The questing, specifically the main story that pushes you forward to new areas, that unlocks new features, is handled very smoothly. You move from area to area, pick up both main story quests and side quests alike. The quests aren't really all that difficult and are of your typical MMO variety. From what I could tell, leveling, and more specifically the quests themselves, weren't gated behind the need to arduously grind like you had to in Allion. There was a variety in the quests that you take, there was variety in the monster type, variety in the types of dungeons. Honestly, while the first hour or two of the game is an absolute snore to get through, much like most MMOs, the game picks up after around 5 or 6 hours and genuinely becomes much more interesting around the 10-hour mark. You begin to encounter much more difficult monsters, you begin to be able to actively participate in world boss fights, and you know what, speaking of world boss fights, well, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and assume that these were world boss fights, because if they weren't, then I really don't know what to expect from the actual fights themselves. But at the very least, from what I perceived to be world boss fights, I think I had more fun attempting to learn boss mechanics than I have had in recent memory. These world bosses would 1 to 2 shot me, and not just me, everybody around me. Players would be downed every other second, and you know what would happen? We would actually have people stop fighting the boss and run over to them to begin rezzing them. Yeah, the community in Bless Unleashed, while absolutely filled with bots spamming real money trading websites, is actually much nicer, much more wholesome than I would have otherwise imagined it to be. Okay, so I'll admit, I died probably more times than I have in an MMO ever outside of Guild Wars 2, and every time somebody would run up and begin aiding me. Oh my god, 56,999 damage! Are you kidding me? 56,000 damage! How do you survive that? Why is this hippo trying to molest me? 911! Help me! Help me, Thumb! 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 No! Yes, yes. I'm alive! This was entirely unexpected. I typically leave people, well, there's a reason for this, but typically I leave people face down because generally I just don't have time, or I get tunnel vision, or I just don't see them. And sometimes it's because I don't really care to res them, but some of these players did. And that is not only the makings of a great community, but it is also an integral part of clearing these encounters in a timely manner. Because let's face it here, while it is all well and good to ignore one another and leave your allies down on the ground, if they were DPSing as well, the boss fight would go exponentially faster. And these boss fights were so much fun. Learning to dodge, watching the boss for small little triggers, warnings that would alert me to whether I had to gain some distance or I was able to run in and DPS like the idiot DPS that I am. But that was pretty much where my enjoyment of the game ended. One major part of every MMO is its combat. If your combat is unenjoyable, then that makes the game a chore to play. Bless Unleashed's combat wasn't terrible, don't get me wrong. I think, honestly, it has better combat than New World had during its last beta test, but I feel like the combat is just so much slower, so much clunkier than its competition. Elion, PSO2 New Genesis, Swords of Legends Online, these are 3 MMOs that launched within the last 3 months that all have much better combat than Bless does. Maybe it was the class I chose, maybe it was my inability to adequately play a melee class in this game, but to me, personally here, I found that everything just felt so slow. Like I would be waiting between every single slash, every click of my mouse or keyboard for the animation to finish and the next to begin. When I'm used to action combat systems akin to something like Black Desert Online or Terra, Vindictus, or even Blade and Soul, all of which have absolutely incredible combat, and I'm presented with something that just feels so sluggish in comparison, I end up kind of bored. Now, Bless doesn't have terrible combat once again. Its combat is honestly not bad, it's just worse than pretty much all of its competition, and given that the majority of the game involves engaging in combat, that is something that I'd just never be capable of getting used to. Then comes the graphics. On the one hand, Bless Unleashed looks quite a bit better than Bless Online, so that is a significant improvement. However, on the other hand, I have seen mobile games, and I know that there are going to be some of you that strongly disagree with this statement, but I have genuinely seen mobile games that actually look similar, and a few of which actually look better than what we are given in Bless Unleashed, which led me to repeatedly express that opinion that this game looks kind of mobile-esque. Not only the aesthetics of the game, but if you just take a minute here to look at the UI, both the main UI and even when opening your inventory, opening your skills page, and don't even get me started on the chat. I know this is ported on over from the console game, I do. If this were built specifically for PC, I'm sure this could have looked so much better, but it wasn't, and looking at the chat reminds me of my time in V4, and V4 was a mobile game. The UI is absolutely horrific. It doesn't matter if you love or hate the game, this UI should never have made it into the final version of the PC iteration of Bless Unleashed, and it is honestly embarrassing that it did. And given that this is a South Korean MMO, I would have expected there to be a lot more customization options for your character as well. While my character did turn out alright, everyone just looked so similar, so basic, so generic. Not something that I've come to expect from Korean MMOs. From what I've gathered, there's some story to the game, a narrative that I probably should have followed more closely. This isn't a negative. Honestly, the story seemed straightforward and fairly traditional. The voice acting in all these new games though, holy, like, I used to think Blade and Soul had bad voice acting. Then I heard the voice acting in all of these new MMOs that have just come out this year, and it made me want to go ahead here and congratulate NCSoft on their professional dub of the game. And that is pretty much it. There are people needlessly hating on this game, projecting their hate for Bless Online, or NeoWiz, or both actually, onto Bless Unleashed. And rightfully so. They have their reasons to dislike the game, just like some of you have your reasons to like it. The game has a large world filled with quests, filled with players and things to do. The leveling process is traditional, which makes it feel comfortable and easy to enjoy. Some of the boss fights you'd encounter out in the world are an absolute blast, some of the most fun that I have had in recent memory. The community seems a lot better than in both Swords of Legends Online and Elion. They genuinely try to help you out and seem fairly active. The combat was very slow and clunky, it felt poorly optimized, and the fluidity was very off. The game looks very dated and it just launched. The UI looks like a mobile game, which makes me shy away from opening or even chatting whenever possible. The voice acting is absolutely atrocious. A lot of people claim that the game is pay to win, and this ultimately bodes quite poorly for the game's potential future, and it has a worse publisher for PC than for console. And that is it. After 20 hours, those are my general thoughts on the game. I had some fun in it, I'm not gonna lie. More fun than I thought I would have been capable of having. I'm also not against admitting when I'm wrong. I was wrong in the past when I said that Bless Unleashed was a terrible game. My sentiment regarding the developer NeoWiz and Round 8 Studios remain ever the same, but this is not about them. Bless Unleashed turned out to be a better game than I gave it credit for, and I am glad to see that players are having fun with it, however long that lasts. Do I think that it's a great game? No. But at the same time, I don't think Elion is either, or Swords of Legends Online, or PSO2 New Genesis. They're all passable games, maybe even good games, but none of them are great games. Bless Unleashed is free though, and this is just my opinion. My thoughts, my experiences, and overall opinion hold no more weight than yours or anyone else's. Do not listen to the masses. If this game looks interesting to you, go download it, go play it. If it doesn't, then don't. Just pass on it and move along. Formulate your own opinion, make your own choice. Don't let the sentiments of others form your opinion for you. That is how we end up with people smack talking games without ever having tried them out.
Someday soon, I'm gonna make